never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.
Hi guys, welcome back to my Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stephan Neff. Today, I have got a beautiful guest back with me because Clarissa Kristjansson was with me about a year ago back, but her topic is so important and so close to my heart that I thought, I want her back. We need to talk more about this transformation that each and every woman will go through in their life. And that is often, it's bizarre because women either hate it, they love it, they're proud of it, they are ashamed. Every single emotion has probably been attached to menopause. And it is a part of life. Yet it can be such a confused time for the women, for the men, or for the significant other, shall I say. So high time that we touch upon that topic and see how a more holistic approach maybe could change all our lives for the better. Clarissa, welcome to my show.
Oh, Stephan, thank you so much. And for having me back again to keep talking about my passion point or points.
That's right. And it's so important because there's firstly, in the medical field, we constantly learn new things. And it is actually an exciting time, 2023, to be out there, because whatever I have learned when I went to university in oh goodness, a different century, things have changed dramatically. And our understanding, especially in the functional medicine realm, is so much nicer. So the holistic approach. How did you get into that yourself? What triggered you initially to go from more a school Western medicine point of view to go more think wider?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think that, I'm a scientist. I believed in science and data, and that was kind of my background. And when I came into working with people and working with women in particular, I came in through mindfulness, but it was still from a very Western medicine lens. When you work with a lot of Western learning around health and wellness, it's got a particular, you've got a problem, it relates to a symptom, and that's how it is. And then I began to realize that there were lots of women who just were not making any progress down this route. And that the root cause of their symptoms isn't necessarily just their hormone change. Somebody once said to me, hormones load the gun, but what pulls the trigger? And that led me to investigate a lot more about, well, what are some of the factors to why people have the menopause that they have? Why do 20% of women have no symptoms? Why are they breezing through this time of life? And then why are 20% of women at the other end, who become the noisy social media face of it, having a really, really horrendous time? And then somewhere in the middle is everybody else who has a journey, which of course it's a journey because it's multiple years, anywhere between 2 to, unfortunately for some people, 10 or 15, that goes like this. And that's where I think functional integrative medicine approaches have a bit of a message, because there we're starting to look at, well, is it diet? Is it my lifestyle? Am I so overworked and overburdened with stress that the interaction between that and the change in my hormones, which are part of natural aging as we move from ovulatory to anovulatory, that's meant to happen. What is going on here? We're not, our hormones don't, our body doesn't operate in separate parts. Yeah. We are not, they're in synergy. They're synergistic in the body. And therefore we need to look at other ways to understand. We now know, for example, that women that have experienced trauma, for example, childhood traumas, will have potentially more difficult menopause experiences.
Interesting. And that makes, to a certain degree, actually sense if you think about it. It would be interesting to break that further down. Women who have gone through childhood trauma and split that up into those people who actually have worked through a series of approaches to help them to come to terms with them versus those who have bottled it up, etc. So
Yes.
immediately the bottling up and the kind of people who never addressed it in their lives, no surprise that now a new trigger, a new change is very easily upsetting the system, does it not?
Exactly. And I think what we are beginning to learn as well is that menopause, or perimenopause, should we say, which is really the big hormonal change, it's going to impact your brain before it impacts your body.
Give us an example.
So for example, we will see structural changes in the brain, in important centers of the brain, in the prefrontal cortex, that happen a long time before we may have a physical symptom. We're beginning to see that brains can look slightly foggy. If you look at the MRI scans, they look slightly, they're bright, clear centers, and then we see them, they look a bit foggy. That can be happening before the common symptoms that have been spoken about in menopause take place. So we're seeing these structural changes in the brain, and often we're seeing mood-related changes come early. They're coming much earlier than many of the physical symptoms, and then the physical symptoms kick in. So we are beginning to learn that stress, trauma, maybe a lack of social connection, immense pressure in our lives have real significant consequences for the type of so-called symptoms, if we like to talk about it in disease terms, then emerge.
So should we not see the appearance of these symptoms as messages from the body to say, oi, you really, you burned a candle on both ends for far too long, your nutrition is shit, you never hydrate, and all those things. And when was the last time you actually really had a good belly laugh and where you really relaxed? Well, the last 3 years were horrible for many, many people out there. So does that not automatically mean that actually the menopause is predictably a chaos, or am I too easy? Is that too I don't know, too obvious?
I think that it sounds really obvious, but it's still not part of the popular cultural narrative. And I think some of that is that we've sold quick fix as a way to solve everything. We live in a very, very fast-paced world, where everything is meant to have a quick fix. And this is not really a quick fix. And I think that this is a slow change. And we are also changing fundamentally. If we think about it as, I want to get rid of these things, this is hard for me. I'll take whatever I'm given. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes it works partially. And we'll talk more about hormone replacement therapy. But change in order to restructure your diet, to exercise, to reframe your relationship with stress is not a quick process.
No.
Because no, go ahead, Stephan.
Ladies first.
No, and I would say, we're sitting here with a figure like 47% of British women, and I don't think they're unique, never exercise in a week.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, so we're in a big hurdle to shift.
Yeah. And of course, you have got then, see, what is the chicken, what is the egg? If we know that there is this cardiometabolic syndrome, and it's basically to do with inflammation within the body, with insulin resistance, those kind of things. So big words, what it means is that our lifestyle is setting our body up to fail. And that then becomes the strokes, the heart attacks, the heart failures. All those kind of things are out there that are essentially are caused by our lifestyle and strongly contributed. Yes, there are genetic predispositions.
Yes.
But ultimately, there's so much to be said about what we do in our daily life. May I ask, when it comes to menopause, are there genetic predispositions there? Are there women who just, when you look into their history, their ancestry, it's written barn door, okay, danger ahead?
Not necessarily. You may not have the same menopause experience that your mother had, or even your sister had. So there isn't a predictive model for that. Right. And I think that does speak to the importance of lifestyle and what's going on around it. And of course, all those factors that you talked about there, all those disease potential risks are exacerbated by the decline and change in form of estrogen in the body, because estrogen plays a protective role in the body. And when it declines and changes from estradiol to estrone, so we don't go zero estrogen, even though that seems to be a popular conversation. We don't. We go to maintenance levels that's required to keep the body well. But we are definitely a loss of that hyper protection that's there earlier on, which of course is there from a evolutionary perspective. We're meant to stay fit and well in our most reproductive years so that the human being can produce the next generation. I mean, it's a little bit like that at the bottom, but you think about the shift. Now we're in maintenance mode as we get older, and we're sort of gradually going aging and aging and aging. But the reality is that the loss of that estradiol is going to increase the risk of heart disease, osteoporosis, and dementia. And without a more holistic approach as we get into the menopause years and beyond, we place ourselves at more risk.
And I think that's so important. Having said that, the way you describe estradiol, or estrogen, to use a bigger word, the estrogen seems to be this protector. So would it not make sense? Put every woman onto hormone replacement and onto estrogen patches? Well, problem solved. The protection continues.
Well, and that is a line that has been obviously used by certain clinicians who are paid by large pharmaceutical companies, have contracts with them to say things like that. The reality is that the science doesn't quite hold up, because the risks of being on estradiol 10 years after your last period. Okay, so up to then, there may be a case for it. Puts women at risk of cancers, and depending on the form you have, breast cancer was one, but we know that may be less. But there is the risk of ovarian cancers, of cervical cancers. So the actual risks increase the longer you are on hormone replacement therapy. And so we see very good guidelines that have been updated by the British Menopause Society, by the North American Menopause Society, here in Sweden by the Medicines Organization, very in line, that after 5 years continuous use of hormone replacement therapy, it needs to be significantly reviewed. And that it is not recommended that any woman over 60 is on this medication. That is the cut. Now, of course, you could go to a private doctor and do whatever you like. I mean, that's your choice. But if you were to go to anyone else, that is generally the rules that they will follow. They're known as the NICE guidelines in the UK, but they mirror around the world exactly the same.
Cool. Well, that's good to know. I mean, for us significant others, okay, you have got this woman who in a moment gives you a kiss, and the next moment pulls the scissors out of your forehead. So if that is my life, and would I not be forgiven to say, come on, take these patches? What is the reality? if someone has massive mood swings, as an example of a symptom of menopause, rightly or wrongly, it might be menopause related, might actually be something else. That's another story. But would actually a patch help?
It might help if it's combined patch, because a lot of the roller coaster emotion is coming initially from the loss of progesterone.
Mm-hmm.
And progesterone is that hormone that regulates our moods. It's why we're very PMS-y in the middle of our cycles. We feel emotions, strong emotions, happy, sad. Progesterone's the real thing. And we don't talk about that. And I asked one of the professors in the US, she's very well known, Geraldine Pryor, I said, why are we always talking about estrogen? And she said, oh, because it was the first one anybody talked about, And she's a progesterone, world expert in progesterone. And she says, we mustn't forget progesterone. That's often, because in the early years that we have this change, it's progesterone that's sinking. It's progesterone that's fluctuating and declining very rapidly. And that then creates, obviously, shall we call it an imbalance, because it's the best way, between the estrogen and progesterone levels. And I would say an imbalance. I don't think it's right to call it estrogen dominance, because that gives people the sense that estrogen is huge in the body, and it's not any more than it was. But there is this bigger gap between the two. And so therefore we're seeing those effects, and progesterone impacts our ability to be calm. It's a supportive, it operates on amygdalas and the hippocampus in the brain. So we're more stress reactive. We find it harder to sleep.
Okay. Yeah. So if we say that the risks of a patch after hormone replacement therapy are mainly related to estrogen, are there progesterone patches that could be of assistance, maybe with a lesser risk, or at least a different risk profile?
Well, women are taking progesterone at certain times of the month in different forms, and then estrogen alongside it. Yeah. So they have a regime of how to take the two medications together.
Right. So essentially a bit like the pill for anti-contraception. Some of the pills, Okay.
Yes.
Well, then coming back to the PMS symptoms, so the premenstrual tension, PMT, or premenstrual symptoms.
Yes.
So if a woman has a lot of those symptoms in the early part of their life, is it then predictable that they also continue with their menopause in a similar way?
Quite possible. Right. Yes. Quite possible that they will have a more difficult time. And obviously, depending on what you have, you may notice those changes more strongly. So I think there's, and it's good to say, I think that you can't talk about menopause without talking about menstruation, really, because they're all a continuum. Sure. So being kind of connected to the two, there is definitely women who have PMDD, which is a more serious condition. They will also experience their menopause more intensely. So there's a continuum in this relationship that needs to be looked at. And that's why it's very important to talk to women who are 35, who are 30, who are 20, to start saying, are you aware of this? Are you putting in place strategies that can support you in order that it's going to be an easier ride? I mean, it's a very difficult conversation. Who at 20, 25 wants to talk about the menopause?
Well, since I seemingly have married the full house of PMS and now the menopause, I strongly suggest that should be put somewhere into the fine print, and being not so fine printed, actually big, bold letters.
Know about this, yes. That's right. Be aware it. Lay your foundations. Yeah.
That's right. But who does that? We are only nowadays coming a little bit more to terms with the fact that we are the product of trauma in our past, the product of everything that is happening to us, and that we often contribute with bad nutrition, etc. So all those things are sort of coming together, and it's only nowadays that we sort of start to realize, hey, we can actually do something about it. And I think that is so important. I mean, it is, whilst as men in my age group who are often suffering from very similar experiences
Yeah.
We have, I mean, everyone says, oh, it's just this knowing grin, but also a feeling of helplessness, of hopelessness, because we have no way to support our gorgeous women. And I think that is the key thing where you're coming in, because you're saying really, actually, yes, there are these hormones going, but ultimately, yes, you can do a patch, but that has risks. And by the way, you can't do it more than 5 years. So what are actually other things that women can do? Are there ways, are there natural ways how to maybe even out the hormone imbalances?
Absolutely. Well, I think diet is the number one thing,
Right.
and it always has been. Diet in Eastern medicine is at the front and center of therapy.
Yeah.
Always has been, whether you're Ayurvedic or Chinese medicine, that is center. And we're sort of learning now that diet in the West now has huge implications. Because again, there's a hormone link. We had to go back to this one, but we are likely to become more insulin resistant as estrogen declines. So therefore, we're more at risk, and we have to think more about the diet we're having. We have to think about that estrogen changes not just your wrinkles. I mean, this is what happens, because obviously we lose collagen and we lose skin and the ability for the water to hold skin and stuff. But that's happening on the inside. That's happening to your blood vessels too. Your blood vessels don't have the same level of integrity because estrogen is involved in maintaining integrity of internal vessels in the body. It's why your pelvic floor starts, declining. It's why lots of the inside of you is going on, which of course leads to longer term health problems if you don't maintain a good diet. And diet is such a great way to start, and it sounds like you always say the same thing, but a plant-based diet is a very good place to start. Because first and foremost, you're coming down from sugar. And sugar isn't what we want. If we are having all these hormonal changes, we know that sugar gets stored as fat in the body when we have a diet that's high. We also know that when we go into, or we don't know, I think isn't talked about enough. I know, but I know lots of other people don't know, should we say, that when you go through menopause, your gut functions slow down. So your food is not processed through your gut at the same rate as it was before. That leads you to be at risk from IBS, other forms of bloating, and a whole host of other issues in the gut. And women talk about bloating. They talk about IBS type symptoms, but they don't make the connection, or even people who work as nutritionists are not making the connection, if you're just someone doing general nutrition, between hormone changes and what's happening in the gut. But if you have a diet that is rich in fiber, not over the top, but is richer in fiber, you are obviously moving your digestion more regularly. You are also supporting a healthier gut microbiome. And your gut microbiome is this wonderful world of billions and trillions of good bacteria that are going to do something fantastic. They produce serotonin in the gut. Serotonin is very important. It travels to the brain and is your happy hormone. Have mood swings? You want more serotonin. It's supporting and balancing, and obviously a whole load of other chemicals. Estrogen plays a role in serotonin production. People don't realize that either. So you've got declining estrogen, but you've also got poor gut function. You're highly likely to be experiencing unpleasant symptoms, but you're also putting at risk your mental health. Plus, an unhealthy gut will put you at risk for things like candida yeast infections, which if you're having a change in estrogen is put you at risk again. And a lot of women will have, cystitis, they'll have candida infections. And these are related to the interaction between a hormonal change and also a very poor diet. So your diet is a great place to start by working. So weight management, which is always talked about, is kind of secondary to this. It's about creating a healthy gut.
And that is where the plant-based diet comes in. We need to remember, or you guys out there need to learn that ultimately this gut microbiome, we are talking about bacteria. And there's all kind of bacteria in there. And there's some really good bacteria and maybe not so good bacteria in there. And there's a constant fight for life and death. I mean, this is any blockbuster, forget it. Any CGI in Hollywood, forget it. What is happening right now in your gut.
Yeah.
Okay. But now, if you think at what these bacteria really need, they don't need sugar. What they really want is lots and lots of fiber, because that's where they really jump down on. And we keep forgetting that. So the highly processed Western diet is exactly the last thing that your gut microbiome actually needs. So that's
absolutely.
So, and that's what I didn't really appreciate. And for crying out loud, maybe I have been the victim of decades of social engineering by some very clever people who want to get as much sugar and as much fat into me, being with the right combination, the bliss point that makes me so, why can't you never have one chip alone? Because it is this perfect salty, sugary, fatty combination with the crunch. That's it. People have perfected that. And that is unfortunately the problem. We are a society that jumps onto that we are like sheep following the bell to the slaughter, so to speak. I hope, therefore, if there's one thing that you can take away of these little spinach leaves. Okay,
they're good. Exactly. They're good, and we want to be eating this throughout the day. So I mean, I have clients who come and they have symptoms. They're really tired. They're not sleeping very well. They have maybe bloating. Life just feels tough, hot flashes, the whole lot. And the very first places we just talk about, and we talk about the diet, and I don't make judgment, I just look at it. And for a lot of women, there's no breakfast inside them, so we start the day with minus breakfast, and that never starts the day off well. I know there's all sorts of fad diets, but sorry, breakfast is quite fundamental.
Oh, no. But what about intermittent fasting then? We know fasting is equally an actually very good thing for the gut. So how does that work? Because you've got you say you need a breakfast, and then other people say, no, you need to fast. What's the story?
It's very controversial with respect to menopause. I think the answer is there are some trials going on at the moment with Professor Tim Spector to look at intermittent fasting in menopausal women. There are some people like Dr. Stacey Sims, who's a very leading nutritionist and therapist. I think she's based in New Zealand. She is absolutely adamant that it's the wrong thing to do. So there is controversy here. I think that it can be very beneficial for us at certain times, but I think to skip breakfast entirely and run on empty all day, which is much closer to what the women I meet do, is not the right thing. I think there are different types to intermittent fast. We don't all have to be 16-8, 16 hours of no eating and cram everything into 8. There can be a 12 and 12, which may work better for you. So it's not a one size fits all. I think that the difficulty is doing it in practice. If you think what people's lives are like, and I can look back to my days in corporate, you arrive in the office at 8:30, you're straight into a meeting. Forget intermittent fasting. You're never going to get to that breakfast point at 10 because you're going to be in some meeting that you never got to. And then so it becomes coffee on the go, lunch at the desk. A sandwich and something is not actually the best breakfast, the best lunch for you either.
Exactly.
Because it tends to be low on plant-based food. By the time you've hit 3 o'clock, you're starving. So something sugary keeps you going. And then you come home and you're really tired and it becomes pasta carbonara and a glass of wine. All of those things are fatal for the gut microbiome, quite frankly, Stephan. I'm laughing, but it is, in that way. And so I think to eat well, we have to be more deliberate about it. And that's where it becomes hard. That's where we have to give people plans to work to that they can work with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it is,
and less liquid food and stuff, that's popular, like kind of.
What, liquid food as in Chardonnay or Pinot Gris?
Liquid food. No, liquid food. Well, that as well. That doesn't help us at all.
No, what are you referring to when you say liquid food?
Smoothies, green juicing. There's no fiber in that.
Interesting.
Yeah, and lots of sugar.
That's exactly right. So, and sometimes that is a pitfall that you can go to. But I mean, everyone says celery juice is so healthy. You should have your celery juice every day. I mean, all the chlorophyll in there, all the green stuff, magnesium, beautiful. What about that?
Well, I mean, it's not bad as an adjunct, but it doesn't, really work in the same way. You want fiber in your gut. So you're much better, a really good breakfast, for example, would be take some kefir and Greek yogurt, mix them together, throw in some berries, some nuts, and some good seeds like flax seeds. They are high in phytoestrogens, which are nature's estrogens. And they will go into the estrogen receptors, pop in nicely into those little receptors in your body and do the job that they do the same job as HRT. They just don't last as long in the body. And there you are. And then go to lunch, have a salad, throw some edamame beans in, eat some chickpeas, in your salad, and then come to dinner and then have something simple like baked fish or with plenty of vegetables.
And it sounds but it is such a fundamental habit that you're establishing, and we can see it. If you have money to burn and actually do every month some really detailed testing of the various markers of inflammation or the markers of your metabolic well-being, or not so well-being for that matter, you will see that a certain not so nice things go down when you actually adhere to those diets, and those things that are maybe really good for you go up. So we can measure that. But unfortunately, it is so much easier to just go for that muffin or that cheesecake or both. Have a muffin and a cheesecake.
Oh yes, have both. Go for both.
That's right. Go for gold. And it is. We need to address it, though. We need to be clear that we have at any one moment in time, we have got a choice. You can either work on your relapse or you work on your recovery. That is as far as addiction is concerned. You work on your mental well-being or you work on your depression. It's your choice.
Yeah.
I had a guest previously whose title for the show was Dementia is a Choice. And that is brutal when you actually think about it. But I don't
disagree.
We can do so much if we actually just pay attention. So we were saying that really that we are both advocates for functional medicine, for going out there and living a life as good as we can. But there are some women who need a gynecologist or a family physician to be by their side. Which women should definitely go along that route of a more westernized treatment, i.e. patches or something similar?
I think that they can be for anybody who's struggling. I mean, if you look at the guidelines, then we're saying if you have extreme hot flashes, and there are women who will have hot flashes for, may have up to 30 episodes a day. I mean, that's not possible. Or you're drenched in sweat every single night and you're having to get up. And we're not talking about I'm a bit hot. We're talking about I have to change all the bedclothes, all my clothes, and then try and get back to sleep. That's a different thing. And we know that hormone replacement therapy, if we look at the guidelines, vasomotor issues are primary usage. Tick. If you can't sleep to the point that it is just crippling, then hormone replacement therapy may help you to get back on track alongside other things. So the guidelines from a Western medicine perspective recommend cognitive behavioral therapy, but I think you could practice mindfulness or whatever else you wanted to do to recorrect that.
Mm.
If you are at real risk of osteoporosis, and it is in your genes, and it is clear, then hormone replacement therapy will help to maintain your bone strength and density.
Mm.
Those things are totally clear.
Mm.
And if you have experienced extreme depression, anxiety, you are bipolar, or you are diagnosed with a schizophrenic disorder, that is not an option for you to go it on your own. And for some of the women with severe mental health issues, they may need specialized psychiatric care. And people like, for example, Dr. Luann Brizendine, who's a very well-known women's psychiatrist, she talks about microdosing HRT for her psychiatric patients. She doesn't go for it. She microdoses it till she finds a dose that works with them alongside their other medication.
And I was about to say, I mean, is it then not also logical to say, okay, if the mood swings, for example, are a predominant something that is just about destroying a marriage, are there psychoactive substances that we should consider? Should such a woman be on fluoxetine or any kind of other serotonin reuptake inhibitors, for example? Would something like that be of help?
Yes, of course. I mean, I think that the sort of it's never as cut and dried because we're individuals. So the answer is, for some women, that is not an option for them not to be on that. And I think where the problem has come in the popular narrative has been, oh, well, he gave me antidepressants, the doctor did, because I came with menopause symptoms. Well, that's wrong too. But it doesn't say if you're a mental health patient that you shouldn't be. Your medication has to be right for you, and it has to be a combined medication, and it requires an expert. I think an interesting conversation I had with Professor Joyce Harper, who's head of reproductive science at University College London. She was one of the guests on my podcast. She said, well, really, your mainstream GP shouldn't be in control of this medication at all, in her opinion. She said, because they really don't have sufficient knowledge about the interactive medications and how things are supposed to work together. You should go to someone who's a specialist.
That makes a lot of sense, actually, especially in the light of newer developments, newer understandings. Take, you were saying earlier on the flaxseed. We know that 2 tablespoons of flaxseed in the morning and the evening is probably a pretty good thing to deal with some of the nasty versions of cholesterol. It is actually an example where by using something that is very simple, where you don't make much money out of it as a big pharma industry, you can actually help with your cardiometabolic syndrome, and on the other side, equally with your menopause, and probably with a number of other things that we haven't even mentioned about. Okay.
Exactly. So I think sometimes what we're seeing is good diet, the right kind of exercise for you at whatever time you're at. Those are fundamentals of life.
Exactly.
And we need to move. We can't not move. We're getting stiffer. We're not getting younger. And we know that loss of estrogen leads to a loss of muscle mass, but we're all aging. So that happens with men too. Just can happen at a faster rate because of the estrogen decline. So we need to be doing strength exercises.
Indeed.
And we need to be moving. And if we feel really fatigued and exhausted, then don't try and do 7 HIIT exercises in a row every day. Maybe more gentle yoga is the right for you. So I think there's a lot about movement and diet, and of course there's a huge amount of managing stress, because stress is just a big factor in here too. So good living can get the majority of women big steps forward. The difficulty is that this is not what women are doing.
Very true. Very true.
So we have the chicken and egg, and then we have the come to the doctors, give me a tablet because that'll fix things, but I don't want to do the other stuff.
Or I can't do the other stuff because, let's say it clearly, there is to go to a gym, well, that is a gym membership, and there are enough people around us who can barely put food on the table, and maybe they only get the cheapest white bread that they possibly can do, because either that or nothing. So let's not be silly there. I mean, luckily,
no, that's true.
We are lucky in some parts of the world because the green prescription is actually something that has been coming in and out of favor here in New Zealand, where the GP can actually prescribe you to go to the gym or prescribe you a exercise program that you don't actually have to pay for, but it's paid for by the state, so to speak. And that is a beautiful thing. But that's not necessarily everywhere and easily accessible. But I think it's well worthwhile for you, if you're struggling with money, then to actually do a visit to your family physician or GP and actually just address those things and actually say, look, are there things, what can I do? Where can I tap into a system? You might be amazed what kind of people are out there that are willing and are there to help you and help you to become the better person that you deserve to be.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really valid point in here. And I know there was a comment made at a food bank where you have to be posh to have menopause. Wow, that's great. That's quite a comment. But at the same time, we can look at walking.
Yeah,
walking is a place we can start.
Absolutely.
It's free. If we have the ability to get onto YouTube, there are some good free lessons on there that we might be able to take that don't require you with special gym clothes or gym membership. We can swap a white bread and probably eat less of the brown, or swap a takeaway meal for something simpler. And I think there's obviously issues with people's culinary ability and all of those things, but there are better choices that people can make that are not going to drive up the costs as much.
Absolutely. On the contrary, then there's so many ways of addressing that by connecting with others. For example, if you all want some rice, well, why don't you go to a wholesale and get some brown rice as a big sack and then divvy it up amongst 10 families? Well, that would be a way how you save money. Plus, you get a better quality rice with a less load on your insulin, less load on your system.
Absolutely.
But it's not a quick fix. You can't just give someone a tablet or a patch or something like that.
No,
it takes a bit of preparation, thinking. But I think that if you guys feel that you're hopeless and helpless out there, either as significant others of a woman with menopausal symptoms, or if you are the woman here listening with bated breath, God, this is really good shit here. There's help out there. There's hope out there.
There is.
And I mean, we have talked about the importance of the exercise, the importance of nutrition, hydration, sleep. All those things are feeding off each other and are integrating each other. We talked a bit about the HRT, that there is a place for some women and place and maybe some risks there as well. What else do we need to keep in mind? If we, let's say you have got a woman who is really focused on her body, she is going to the gym, she is actually eating healthy. She is only the odd splurge here and there, barely any alcohol, once for Christmas and once for her birthday. She is living a good life, but still comes with menopausal symptoms from hell. What would you tell such a woman? What are there other factors out there that we haven't talked about?
Well, I think some of the factors may well be: is it all menopause?
Ooh,
nice. Is it your thyroid?
Of course.
Important organ, and
Absolutely.
Many of the symptoms that we see show up as menopausal symptoms are thyroid issues. And I'm very keen that women should have a full examination. Now, there's not a test for menopause, so I'm always saying there is no test, because your hormones do this the whole time. So they're fluctuating. So you might be here and they say you're not menopausal, but go and have a full range of tests. You should be looking at your thyroid and have all 4 of the key thyroid tests that are available to you, because that may be a particular part of where you are. If you need HRT, you may need to have a different conversation with a specialist. That may help. You may need to look at other things. Is it DHEA levels? Have you got out of the box cortisol levels that need some support as well? All of these things you need to have tests for. And I would say then it is, could it be some other part of your body that isn't working right? You know? Yeah. Exactly. Because it's then not just your menopausal symptom. You're doing everything right and you're still struggling. Then it's time to dig deeper.
That's really good. But it's also, let's not forget that you can have 2, 3, 4 problems at the same time. You could have, of course, your menopause happening because it's part of your transformation as a woman. And you could have a problem with iron deficiency, let's say from the gut, plus you have got any other issues happening, and so on. Added together, it's a really confusing picture. But that's what we are here for. That's why a good doctor will be by your side. And that's where your family physician and the GP comes in, because those are like the conductors in an orchestra. So they are the center, they're by your side. And then they say, okay, we've found that it's a bit dodgy. Let's send you to that specialist. But so the guidance comes back. And then as a team, you and your GP work together and actually create a plan that you can follow, that you implement. And if everything goes smooth, cool, I see you in 6 months. If things don't go so well, I see you in 2 months or in a month. So again, individualize it and actually work with what you are given, because there might be very much the input of a psychologist, be part and parcel of it, because it's the first time that you deal with those things that you have pushed down and pushed away. 1 in 3 women in the United States, and probably in many parts of the Western world, have been raped or sexually abused. 1 in 7 men. All that doesn't just disappear and go poof.
No.
So, okay.
It comes to the surface. And I think there may be a case for working with conventional and a really good support mechanism in terms of a holistic. We know now that things like acupuncture can be incredibly helpful alongside that to get to some root causes. You may need, so we know that that can happen, that those 2 things could come together. You're right, psychological help can be involved. If you're doing all the good stuff yourself, maybe you need to see a functional nutritionist, because maybe there is a real deficiency in there that you're not aware of.
Exactly.
So I think it's about, and again, that's harder if you're not economically able, but and because services are hard. But if you have the resources, then you may have to put together a suite or maybe a continuation of different aspects of help and support that get you to where you need to be. And it's also important to remember this does pass. It does eventually pass. A lot of the menopause symptoms will disappear after the years. And we do know that women feel a lot better quite suddenly in terms of the roller coaster.
Right.
We're still going through phenomenal change, because even if our menstruation is over, we're still going through a lot of hormonal change, but it's not as chaotic. It becomes a bit from a roller coaster to this nice calm sort of sea where we can gradually accept and allow the remaining changes. And then we're aging after that. So, I mean, it may also be that there's fear of aging and tied up in all of this too.
Oh, absolutely. But again, this is something where we as a society need to implement better ways of supporting each other. Just because there is a number associated with your body at the moment, it's called age. Well, no. The next 50 years going to be exciting for me.
Exactly.
I know it is, because we are learning all these kind of things that we can do to help our body and maintain our body at peak level. I mean, how beautiful is that? So no, this is exciting. This is exciting.
It is. We're starting to say, well, I can do lots of things. And I think it's a great time to sit back and say, actually, do I want to keep living the way I've been living? You know, once we're sort of 50, 55, if we have a family, they're pretty much out the door at 55. And we can stand back and we say, do I really want to do the job I'm doing? Is this still giving me the thing? In our 50s, do I really want to do another 15 plus years of this job? Or do I want to do something different? What are my relationships like? Are they working for me? Do we need to have some conversations? It doesn't, and I would never say this means you have to end your relationship, but it may need that you need to have a different type of conversation around your relationship so that you're nurtured and supported in the right way. What are my interests? Do I like the job I do, but I don't have a lot of interest in hobbies? So the things that I've put on the back burner for all these years, and maybe I'd like to go back. I see people doing phenomenal things, phenomenal stuff, you know, traveling places, starting blogs, writing books. All of these things are possible for us to do that we can begin to take up and create a life that makes us great. I always think the Blue Zone study is a wonderful example of people living well into their 80s and 90s through diet and exercise, but a lot of it was social connection and having purpose. And I think a lot of us trudge through those years. We don't have purpose because we get focused and tied into our families and costs and mortgages and this and that. And it's about maybe having time to reframe, actually, what is that I want to do?
I love it. Absolutely love it. And yeah, it is. There is a life waiting for us out there. And maybe women should consider the menopause as a kind of a bell ringing, but not the bell of, oh my God, I'm losing my womanhood. No, you're like a wake-up call, maybe the alarm going and say, okay, you've come on, you've been 40 years now in your job, at home, you've done all these roles, and maybe is it time to just step off your hamster wheel for a moment and actually think what's going on. So maybe look at it positively from that point of view. If we have the mindful approach to actually say, okay, does that life that I've been living for 40 years, does that still suit me? Or is it time for a little rethink and learning new behaviors that maybe set me up in a much better way from now on forward?
I mean, that's totally part of anything that we want to do with it. It's how I work with people, that yes, you fix bodies, but you also need to work with life. You, who are you? What do you want? What's the spirit in you want? Are you doing things that you enjoy? Because if there's no joy, we're never going to stick on the diet or the exercise program. We're never going to do any of those things.
Exactly.
But we are also just dying a little bit of us if we have no joy. And what that looks like for you looks different for everybody. So there's not a blueprint. You know, it doesn't all mean downsize to a small apartment, get rid of your husband or partner and, whatever. No. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means some completely different things for each and every one of us.
Absolutely.
And I think there are lots of people out there who make great role models for people in their 60s and 70s who we should be putting forward. They're not celebrities. They're ordinary, everyday people who are doing amazing stuff that's bringing them joy and doing other things for other people. I think community is a big part of what we can be involved in too.
So true. So true. I love the passion in your voice. I love the passion in your eyes. That twinkle there. That's exactly the way I want to live. And that's why I get up in the morning. I want to do my show here, because I can bring people like you on who are so steadfast in their approach. And guess what, guys, out there, it's not easy to follow all that or to do all that. And are we sometimes relapsing, or are we sometimes tired and going for a fast food? Of course we do. But we always know that there are choices. And once you've got that privilege of choice, then you might actually say, well, actually, no, I want to now have a glass of water, and I will actually have something really nice. And I will actually take a time to prepare myself something. And you might be amazed, it only takes you 10 minutes, but you have done it yourself, and you've done this lovely, I don't know, maybe some nice salmon on some salad there, and your mouth goes watery already because you think, wow, that tastes good. It's good for me. You've achieved something. You thought, wow, I did that. And it's so when you add it up, there's so many benefits from a little thing where you took control and where you made the right choice for yourself. Wow. How beautiful is that?
Exactly. It's beautiful and simple to do. We don't celebrate those small steps that lead to big change. That is what we need to do. Yeah. So be inspired and do small things. Yeah.
Absolutely. Clarissa, you're a wonderful woman. I always get so much joy out of our communications and just chatting. Clarissa, if people want to know more about you, where can they find you?
It's a good place to go to my website, which is my name, ClarissaKristjansson.com. And you get a good sense of what I work with, how I think, things you can join in, because I have classes that are free to working with me personally. So there's a range there for everyone who wants to learn more, live more holistically. I'm on Instagram mainly. That's my main social handle, which I think Stephan will put that Instagram, Thriving Through Menopause, or listen to my podcast, Thriving Through Menopause, where I interview lots of amazing menopause sort of experts with a holistic view on the world, and women who have incredible stories of turning their lives around too, and just be inspired.
Beautiful. And guys, don't forget, it's all down there in the description of the YouTube video, of the podcast. It's all there. What have you got to lose? If you want to know more, if you want to explore this opportunity a bit more, it's all there. Clarissa, I sent you all my love here from New Zealand all the way to Sweden. I know this is not the last time that we two work together. We need to bring that message out there that there is hope, that there's help out there. And that's what both of our podcasts are really all about. So that's wonderful. So thank you very much for coming as a guest on my show.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure, as always, to be here.
Perfect. And you guys out there, look after yourself and live with passion. Bye.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.